Welcome back to The Explainer. So, today we are unpacking something that is, honestly, truly unsettling. We're going to examine three real world paranormal claims pulled directly from our source material. And look, whether you're a hardcore skeptic or a total believer, our goal today isn't to validate or debunk any of this. We're just here to lay out the terrifying details of these cases exactly as they were presented. We're talking black magic, a horrific demonic summoning, and an inescapable ancestral curse. Ready? Let's get into it. To get us started, I want you to think about your own living space for a second. We all value the safety of our homes, right? It's our sanctuary. But what actually happens when you voluntarily invite the unknown right across your threshold? Well, the source material for our very first case presents a seriously chilling premise. Sometimes the greatest danger isn't some random bump in the night. It's actually the stranger you actively choose to rent a room to. Which brings us to case 1, the Dehradun PG. So here's the setup. This older couple in Dehradun, Mira and Rahul, they end up renting out a room to a young woman named Naina. Pretty normal, right? Well, Rahul soon discovers a completely terrifying pattern behind how Naina was manipulating people to get whatever she wanted, including, by the way, a job at his very own company. It's wild. She would shake someone's hand, secretly prick their skin to draw just a tiny drop of blood, lick it, whisper a chant, and snap her fingers. And just like that, snap, the victim falls under her absolute, complete hypnotic control. They'd give her whatever she asked for and have zero memory of why they even did it. Now, as Naina continued living in their house, the sensory escalation of Mira's torment became absolutely horrific. I mean, her physical and mental health just tanked rapidly. She started seeing live insects and spiders literally crawling in her food. She suffered from these violent, intense hallucinations so bad she was tearing at her own skin. When she couldn't eat anymore, she started vomiting small iron wall nails. Yeah, wall nails. And the physical torture climaxed when a choking Mira looked into her bathroom mirror, hallucinated a hand reaching out of her own throat, and physically pulled a severed human finger out of her mouth. Her psychological break was just absolute. During one totally terrifying incident, Rahul rushes in to help his wife, only to find her violently strangling herself. And as she's choking, she's screaming this exact quote, "Naina will kill me. Naina is not Naina." And the strangulation marks left on Mira's neck? They weren't just standard bruises. They were actual burn marks, as if the hands choking her were searing hot. And that brings us to the gruesome climax of this Dehradun case. Rahul and Mira were eventually found dead in their home by their servants. It was an incredibly terrifying scene. Both of their necks were unnaturally twisted, and their bodies were already rotting and infested with insects, like aging at this grossly premature rate considering they'd only been dead a short time. When the police investigated Naina's room, they found it packed with black magic items, rotting flesh, and a voodoo doll with Mira's name right on it. But Naina herself? Poof! She vanished entirely, somehow dodging all the CCTV cameras, just leaving this massive wake of absolute destruction. So, from a calculated, solitary practitioner of black magic, we move over to the sheer arrogance of youth. This next account poses a pretty implicit question. What happens when teenagers decide to challenge the occult by playing two supposedly cursed games at the exact same time? Well, the answer, according to the source material, is that a deeply, deeply vengeful demon gets unleashed. Let's get into case 2, the Canadian hostel. The crucial point here is that these students, Ethan, Emily, Ryan, and Samir, they didn't just play a game. They intentionally broke heavily established occult rules. Right during the peak of this whole online craze, they were explicitly warned by commenters and even an occult shop owner that combining a Ouija board with a Charlie Charlie challenge was incredibly dangerous. But wanting internet fame, they completely ignored the warnings. They snuck right into the restricted, pitch-black basement of their school's hostel to broadcast their ritual live on the internet. And the timeline of the resulting chaos is just rapid and brutal. At 10 p.m., as they're mocking the games on their live stream, the basement lights violently flicker and just shatter, plunging them into total darkness as this deep, growling sound starts getting closer. By 11 p.m., they flee upstairs to room 417. But once they get inside, the horror just escalates. At 11:15, Emily's eyes roll back into her head, and she literally levitates off the bed. No joke. It wasn't until a spiritually aware professor rushed into the room and pressed a cross onto her forehead, which actually left a physical burn mark, that she finally dropped back down to the mattress. Now, to truly understand what they summoned, we kind of have to look at a horrifying backstory. See, the students had bought these items from an old occult shopkeeper, but it turns out that shopkeeper used to be a guard at their very own school. Years prior, some malicious students had framed him for leaking exam papers by planting cash and stolen tests right in his room. He was wrongfully fired, completely humiliated, and even disowned by his own family. So he turned to black magic. He murdered the students who framed him right there on the school grounds, and then he burned himself alive, vowing that he would never leave the school. He basically bound his dark, vengeful spirit to the very Ouija board those teenagers just purchased. So once summoned, this demonic entity goes on a path of absolute destruction. It first feeds on Emily's pure soul, leaving her completely physically drained and turning her skin gray. Then, once she was useless to it, the demon transfers into Ethan's body. Possessed, Ethan gains this insane superhuman strength. He grabs Emily and snaps her neck, killing her instantly. As the remaining boys run for their lives, Ethan grabs an axe and chases them down. He catches Ryan in a heavy, old-fashioned iron elevator gate and violently crushes him completely in half. Samir, the lone survivor, manages to chant prayers, escape the building, and runs straight to a nearby church. The demon was bound to the school grounds, so thankfully it couldn't follow him outside. Okay, let's transition over to our final file. Case 3, the ancestral curse. This case actually moves away from that kind of sudden, bloody violence and dives into the grueling torment of a multi-generational haunt. This family's sprawling home was plagued by a dark energy tied to the land itself. And it all originates from a deeply disturbing discovery. A severed calf's head was found buried right in their backyard. Inexplicably, later on, the family shaped the concrete pillars on their roof to perfectly mimic that very calf's head. It's almost like it was an unconscious manifestation of the curse, binding itself directly to the property. Because of this curse, the family had to endure these highly specific, daily paranormal routines. You guys, this wasn't just a one-off haunting, it was a literal schedule. Every single night at 3 a.m., they would hear the distinct, aggressive sound of someone sweeping the front of the house while hopping on one leg. Then, at 2 a.m., heavy footsteps and the sound of dancing anklets would just echo from the roof. The grandmother of the house even noted that looking out at the entity sweeping would result in severe sickness the very next day. The entire house was just constantly saturated with this lingering, incredibly oppressive, negative energy. 25. That is the sheer scale of this curse's impact. There were 25 family members living in this ancestral home across multiple generations, and absolutely every single one of those members suffered from broken limbs and horrific tragedies. This wasn't just bad luck or coincidence. The guest who actually recounted this story noted that he himself had his hip absolutely shattered by a scooter when he was only 6 months old. The curse literally demanded a physical toll from every single blood relative who lived on that land. Ultimately, they came to a really sobering realization. The family tried rituals, they tried cleansings, but the curse was just too deeply embedded into the very soil. To save the upcoming generation from any more broken bones, miscarriages, and torment, they finally accepted that there was only one escape. They had to completely abandon their ancestral land. It really goes to show that some doors to the paranormal, once they are opened by a curse, simply cannot be closed. So we've explored the terrifying consequences of renting to the wrong person, playing games you definitely shouldn't, and living on land that flat out doesn't want you there. It kind of makes you look at your own surroundings a little differently, doesn't it? As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought based on everything we've just uncovered. Are you entirely sure you're alone in your home right now?